Hi again, welcome back, and let's continue our reading here in Patriarchs and Prophets. And we were talking about the lions and the lambs laying down together and playing with each other at Adam and Eve's feet, in the garden, and how things will be like that for us too in the new earth when God creates it, and in heaven also. Okay? And I wanted to bring something else out about the control issue, that word control, because I think, excuse me, that we don't look at it the way that God looks at it. God controls our world and He takes care of our world at the same time. He is a peaceful ruler, as we read earlier, as far as how He ruled or cared for His beings that He created in heaven, the angels, okay, and the other worlds. And what's happened as a result of sin down here on our earth, we hurt one another. Okay, we look at that word control and it flips into something that's negative. It does not mean caring at all. Okay, and we need to go to God and ask Him to teach us how to care instead of hurt one another, instead of trying to control and make people do what we want them to do. God doesn't make us do anything. Okay, He's given us free will, and we can choose whether to serve Him or not, or to obey Him at our own risk if we don't. So I ask everybody to look at this word control differently. Okay, it should be a blessing to control or to help or to care for. That's what it really means. Those of us who have spouses who try to control and make one spouse do what the other spouse wants them to do, that is not good. That's not correct. Okay? We need to go to God to get the real perspective, the real meaning behind the word control. It does not mean to coerce. Okay? Very, very important, and I wanted to mention that. And some of us that are in abusive relationships, God does not mean for us to live that way. Okay? So we must take care of ourselves and make sure that at all times we are not being coerced and we're not being injured or hurt. So we must do what we need to do to get out of those relationships, okay, as soon as possible, okay, in the safest way possible. So just wanted to mention that control does not mean coercion in God's eyes, okay? Okay, now, excuse me, we just finished reading about the lions and the lamb sporting around Adam and Eve, being happy to be around them and with them. And we're on the end of page 50 in Patriarchs and Prophets. The happy birds flitted around them without fear, and as their glad songs ascended to the praise of their Creator, Adam and Eve united with them in thanksgiving to the Father and the Son. The holy pair were not only children under the fatherly care of God, but students, receiving instruction from the all-wise Creator. Okay, very, very important. Okay, from God, who in the form of Jesus was talking to Adam and Eve and instructing them. Okay, and the angels were helping and instructing them also. Okay, they were receiving direct instruction from God. Okay, which was just the neatest thing, if you can just imagine that. Okay, they were visited by angels and were granted communion with their Maker, with no obscuring veil between. And what that means is the obscuring veil, the veil that creates a shadow or creates a division between us and our Maker, is sin. Okay, we must remember that. Adam and Eve didn't have that veil. Okay, they could see their Maker clearly and converse with Him clearly and at all times without any problems whatsoever. And meaning that they didn't have to pray, okay, because they could talk to Him in person. But we have to pray to God, okay, to Jesus, because of sin, because of that veil that keeps us from direct contact with Him. Now, it doesn't keep Him from directly contacting with us, because He can do that because He's God. But there is a barrier between us and Him which is sin. Okay, so we cannot converse with him directly, meaning face to face, okay, like Adam and Eve did. But when he returns, and those of us who have chosen him as our creator, as our leader, as our God, then that veil will be gone. That veil will be deleted, because we will be one with him as he is with the Father, as the Godhead are with each other. Okay, we will be one with them. Now remember, we're not going to be God. We're going to be his children without the sinful barrier. Okay, we will be happy with him, with them at all times. Okay, 24/7. So that obscuring veil is sin. They were full of the vigor imparted by the tree of life, and their intellectual power was but little less than that of the angels. Okay, talking about Adam and Eve. The mysteries of the visible universe, the wondrous works of him which is perfect in knowledge, afforded them an exhaustless source of instruction and delight. You can find that passage in Job 37, verse 16. Okay? So as we study God's creation, it is just the neatest thing. It's just wonderful, because there's always more to learn, okay, about this world and about the other worlds that he's created, okay? It's just the neatest thing to take that time out and try to learn more about our surroundings, about our environment, and to see what the wonders of God and what he has done. The laws and operations of nature, which have engaged men's study for 6,000 years, were opened to their minds by the infinite framer and upholder of all. Okay, meaning God. They held converse with leaf and flower and tree, gathering from each the secrets of its life. Now we got to stop and pause here for a second, because what we just read was Adam and Eve communicated with the trees, the flowers, the leaves, the animals, okay? And they communicated back with Adam and Eve, explaining to them about what they were, how they were made, and about their lives. And isn't that just, it's just amazing to imagine, okay, that they communicated with God's creation, okay? And there is a verse in Scripture about, there's a couple of them, but one of them that I'm remembering right now is where Jesus told the fig tree that it would be cursed because it didn't grow any figs. It looked like it was a fig tree, but it didn't hold any fruit, and thus it was cursed and it would die. And right after he said that to the fig tree, it died. Then another example we have is how Jesus was in the boat with his disciples, and how the disciples were so afraid because there was a horrible storm that was threatening their lives, and Jesus was asleep in the boat. Didn't bother him whatsoever. They were so afraid. They woke him up and said, aren't you worried about our lives, that we might die? And so Jesus says, well, what are you worried about? And all Jesus did was he spoke to the wind and he spoke to the waves and said, peace, and be still. Okay? Only God can do that. Okay? So, because Adam was without sin, and he was directly communicating with God, and he was completely obedient, okay? God gave him the power to communicate with his creation, okay? And it communicated back with him. Just amazing. Just amazing to think about that you could walk outside to a tree and it could talk to you, okay? Maybe in tree language, but you would understand it, okay? Isn't that wonderful? All right, we will be right back.